Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters, and welcome back to our Fantastic Fest 2024 coverage. This time, coming back to you with a little flick that we were kind of anticipating. I think we were pretty interested in seeing this back when Fantasia was around. Well, I was. I thought it looked neat. The concept was certainly neat, and that's Frankie Freako. Yes, this comes from Steven Kostansky, one of the folks behind films that you'll love, like Psycho Gorman and The Void, as well as a few others. He's kind of a part of this team. They've done all kinds of stuff. Some of them have went off to make other films, like In a Violent Nature. But you'll probably know Kostansky's work primarily for doing a lot of the effects. He's an effects guy. So when he steps behind the camera, you can expect that his films are going to be extremely effects heavy. So when you look at a concept like Frankie Freako, kind of going back to that Garbage Pail Kids kind of puppets interacting with humans kind of thing, you have my interest. I think, like, with an interesting story, with interesting worlds, interesting settings, things that go on, you could have a really fun movie here. But unfortunately, I don't think Frankie Freako was that. So Luke, go ahead, rip the Band-Aid off. Let us know how you feeling about Frankie Freako.
Looking at the movie, I like, the poster, the concept, because when you look at, you have Frankie Freako, this little thing. I don't know what he is exactly.
He's a
He's a little
freak.
Freako.
He's a weirdo.
But, looking at it, I love
He's
these
a
kind of
party guy.
zany, wacky ideas that are kind of like, hey, the gloves are off. We know what this film is. It's a world of possibilities. Who knows where we can go in a film like this? And you're right, with great storytelling, you can really put together some compelling instances. I go back to um, I'm a fan of the movie Munchie from the late 80s, which no one probably is a fan. They have Munchies and then Munchie. Um, and I went into that kind of the idea of opening up this world that's just really wacky and really weird. I was excited to see what they're going to do with it. Unfortunately, I don't think that they take advantage of the concept fully in this one here. I was left wanting more. I was left looking at scenes saying, "Oh, I wish they would have done this," or "I wish they would have went here with it," because it does open itself up for some intriguing concepts. And this isn't really, I guess you'd say, a true blue horror film in any sense. This is more comedy. I don't even know if you would say that there are horror elements in there. There's some gore in it. But I don't think even to that extent it's very minimal. So there isn't really, if you're a big horror fan going into Frankie Freako, I think you should go in looking more so for laughs. But for me, this isn't really my type of comedy either.
Yeah, this is a very niche kind of film. This is extremely niche. There's going to be a certain select audience that I think is really going to fall in love with this, and I think that it is a specific kind of humor. It's not very, like, crass, or it's not very, like, overly jokey or overly slapstick. It's very on the nose, very direct. It's kind of cold, and I think that there's definitely elements to it that I thought were kind of funny, but for the most part, I found myself kind of waiting for the movie to take me. I was waiting for it to really sink its hooks in and me to really fall in love with our little puppet characters and really start to get, invested into the movie. Now, the movie's only like an hour and 22 minutes, so it's not very long. So by the time that actually does start to happen a little bit, the movie's almost over. And I found that to be very disheartening. I guess you could almost call this kind of like a play on, I guess you'd say late 80s, early 90s kind of children's comedies. You know what I mean? Like they're kind of harping on that style of just like a wacky little character comes out of this world to mess with our stuck up boring dad character or whatever. But, like, it's, I don't know, it just didn't necessarily feel as nostalgic and as fun as I think the creators were going for. At least to me. Maybe this will connect with a lot of people, but I don't know. I just found myself kind of being a bit more meh on the whole thing by the end of it. Cause like there is one sequence, we've discussed it off air a little bit, where we go somewhere and it's like, well, that could have been cool. That could have been a lot of fun if we would have played into that. But it's kind of like we're there and then we're out of it. And it's like, oh, well, why did we even have to do that? Why didn't we just come up with a more zanier concept in the real world? You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it is what it is. And I found it to be a bit of a disappointment.
Yeah, I think I was left wanting more from this film. From a writing perspective, I think the dialogue is a little on the nose in terms of the humor and the instances that we're going into, and I think that's completely intentional. I just feel like, for the most part, an audience is past that type of comedy. That feels almost 10 years ago, from a comedic standpoint. So it was more eye rolly for me rather than really, something that I was chuckling at. I think there are a couple funny instances in the film, but overall, it just doesn't really work. I don't know. I think maybe a general audience could struggle with this one just because we're kind of past this point. It's more so, I guess you'd say, like toilet humor, which is fine, but it doesn't necessarily work for a general audience. And even our main character, I'm forgetting his name, but our human character, um
Connor.
Connor, even there, I don't think that the performance was 100% compelling. I found him a little more annoying than like likable, and me being able to take this journey with him. And he's, a pretty mundane style character, which, is completely intentional, but it's just something that I think as an audience, you may not resonate with that character 100%. And, the dynamic between him and his wife, I think, is rather interesting in what they can present with the Freakos coming in and doing what they do to his life, but we never really step outside that box and take it one step farther. Like Dylan said, we do kind of change the scenery just for a little bit of time, and it gets you excited to say, okay, now we're really getting into the potential of this film and what's going to happen. But again, we're in and we're out, and we're back to the same instances. There's a great effect toward the end of this film with a character that I thought was rather interesting, which I would have loved to have seen more of that. But again, the interesting ideas that they present in this film seem like they're very minimal time on screen, where it's like we're in, we're out. We don't really take advantage of what could have been, and maybe that's a budgetary constraint, but it's one of those things where maybe a little less special effects, maybe a little less puppetry, and more expanding the real world in the universe there, and that storytelling to kind of give us a little stronger narrative for us to latch onto while we're enjoying our Frankie Freakos and little puppets.
And I think you bring up a great point there. Like, if they could have pulled back on some things, I would say, cut our other two puppets that you see
Yep.
throughout the film. I say cut them, make it strictly Connor and Frankie, and just really build on that dynamic. The kind of how they are at odds, and then kind of bring them together. You would have, I think, hit a lot harder on the style and the kind of toilet humor kind of film you're trying to make. I think that you would have been able to focus a little bit harder, because it does feel like with us having those three characters, they didn't know necessarily where to put the focus sometimes. And I don't feel like we got enough of anybody really. So yeah, I think that this is one I'm gonna have to give a proceed with caution. Again, it's not something that's overly, offensive. It doesn't ruin anything for me. It's not something I'm upset by, but I see this as being such a niche film, and such a specific kind of audience will appreciate it, that it is definitely something I can't say you need to rush out and go see. If it looks interesting to you, if it seems like something that you would like to spend some time with, maybe wait for streaming, just to kind of see what it is, and then you can support it by the Blu-ray. But yeah, I have a little bit of a harder time saying you need to go see Frankie Freako.
Yeah, I'm gonna second that. Looking at the film, I think if the trailer compels you from a comedic standpoint, I think this movie would be for you going into it. I think you'll get what you came for. But if you're looking at the trailer saying, I'm not necessarily sold on what we were given in the little trailer, and I want to see what they're going to present because of the world of possibilities, or from a horror perspective, I can't wait to see what they're going to add that they didn't show us. There isn't much beyond that. What you see is what you get with this film. So, I'd say proceed with caution. I don't think this is going to be a huge general audience film. I think it's going to be, very spotlight on a particular audience that is going to get what they came for, and they're going to enjoy it. So I think there's fun to be had here. I just don't think it's going to be for a bigger audience. And if you're looking for a darker twist, a deep horror root here, you're not really going to find one. I think there's some light elements, but overall, there's really nothing here that's going to make it stand out for a horror audience and say, I want to go back and rewatch Frankie Freako. So I think maybe there's some fun humor for you. I think special effects wise, there's some things that you certainly should take a look at. But overall, I think Frankie Freako is going to be something that a bigger audience should proceed with caution with.
Absolutely. But alrighty, guys, it's going to wrap us up here for Frankie Freako. Definitely let us know if you've gotten a chance to see the film, if you think we're way off on this one. Is this one right up your alley? Or are you kind of feeling the same with us? So other than that, we got a lot of great stuff up on deck. Lots more films here at Fantastic Fest. We have only merely scratched the surface. Lots of stuff down the pipeline. We're still getting a couple of screeners, and we are still moving through them. So definitely keep it right here on Splattercast with us. And until next time, I'm Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.
Do the hard shit, gonna do it live. Cause Splattercast kick it every day they live. Splattercast, gonna slash your ass. 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 Splattercast, gonna slash your ass.